darkest story.
Marcus Blackwood, 30 years old. He is a successful, charming, and mysterious businessman. His skin color is somewhat brown, but he lies that he has tanned his skin to be fashionable, deceiving everyone about his true origin. Cold, scheming, but extremely intelligent. A young investor owning many big projects. Evelyn Lancaster, 26 years old. The only daughter of the Lancaster family, gentle, innocent, kind-hearted, art director of a fashion brand. She is passionate about art and does not care about family power. Edward Lancaster, 55 years old, Evelyn's father, an upper-class billionaire, CEO of the Lancaster Group. He is extremely discriminatory about rich and poor, and skin color, domineering, cruel, ready to destroy anyone who gets in his way. Victoria Lancaster, 50 years old, Evelyn's mother, noble-born, extremely scheming and ruthless woman, protecting the family's reputation at all costs. Logan Hayes, 40 years old, Edward's personal bodyguard, loyal, ruthless, willing to kill anyone who threatens the Lancaster family. Daniel Cross, 35 years old, a former police investigator who was harmed by Edward and turned to help Marcus, investigating evidence of the crimes that the Lancaster family has hidden for many years. At a lavish party of the elite, dazzling lights reflect off expensive wine glasses. The artificial laughter blends with the soothing music, creating a world where money and power reign supreme. Among the room full of arrogant and ruthless figures, Marcus Blackwood enters, calm, mysterious, yet irresistibly charming. His appearance is a perfect deception. A successful businessman with a slightly tanned complexion, a captivating smile, and piercing eyes. No one knows that he is here for revenge. Across the room, Evelyn Lancaster, the noble heiress of the Lancaster Empire, chats with her friends. She is pure, gentle, completely unaware that she is about to become a pawn in a carefully calculated game. Tonight, a tragic love story is about to unfold. The lavish party was held at the Lancaster estate, where the elite gathered, their crystal glasses clinking softly, blending with the classical music played by a live orchestra. Elegant gowns, tailored suits, fake smiles, and power-driven conversations created an atmosphere that was grand, yet full of deception. Marcus Blackwood stepped inside, his perfectly tailored black suit hugging his tall frame, polished Italian leather shoes reflecting the golden glow of the grand chandelier above. He walked through the crowd with confidence, though every step was carefully calculated. His eyes locked onto only one person, Evelyn Lancaster. She stood in the center of a group of socialites, her golden hair cascading over her delicate shoulders, her sapphire blue eyes as clear as the summer sky. She looked too pure, too different from the scheming individuals surrounding her. She doesn't seem like her parents, Marcus thought momentarily, but he pushed the thought away. He wasn't here to have doubts. He was here for revenge. He moved toward her, each step deliberate, measured. The game had begun. "Miss Lancaster?" Marcus's deep voice carried an air of quiet dominance. Evelyn turned, her eyes widening slightly at the sight of him. He was a stranger, yet something about him was undeniably captivating. "Yes, and you are—" Her voice was gentle but laced with a hint of caution. Marcus smiled, the kind of smile he knew could make anyone lower their guard. "Marcus Blackwood? I've seen you at a few events before, but we never had the chance to meet." Evelyn tilted her head slightly as if trying to recall him, but it didn't matter anymore. His presence, strong and undeniable, had already captured her attention. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Marcus. Are you an investor?" Marcus smirked, his gaze briefly flickering to Evelyn's parents across the room, who were busy mingling with other powerful figures. "You could say that." He took a sip of his wine, his tone laced with an air of mystery. His fingers rested lightly on the stem of his glass as he studied Evelyn. Did she know what kind of monsters her parents were? Did she know she had been raised by demons in disguise? Probably not. She was too pure. Someone like her shouldn't exist in a family like that. And that made Marcus hesitate for the briefest of moments. But he quickly regained control. Tonight, he had stepped into the world of his enemies. Evelyn smiled softly, her lips curving in a way that seemed effortless, untouched by the weight of manipulation or deceit. It was a smile Marcus wasn't prepared for. There was no calculation in her expression, no trace of the arrogance he had come to expect from the Lancaster family. That, in itself, was unsettling. She wasn't like the other pretentious elites. But what did that mean? Did she truly know nothing about what her parents had done? Or was she simply another pawn in their cruel game one, who had been trained so well that even she believed in the illusion of her innocence? Marcus wasn't sure. But there was one thing he did know. He couldn't let emotions cloud his judgment. He had spent years crafting the perfect plan. Get close to Evelyn, make her fall for him, gain her trust, and then crush her heart the same way her parents had crushed his mother. It had been so clear, so simple in his mind. But now, standing face to face with her, hearing the softness in her voice, seeing the warmth in her eyes, he realized something terrifying. She's too pure to be dragged into this world. A flicker of hesitation crept into his chest, a dangerous, forbidden thought. But it was too late for second-guessing. He had already stepped into this game, and there was no turning back. Evelyn tilted her head slightly, watching him with genuine curiosity. So, Marcus, what kind of investments do you specialize in? Her voice was gentle, but there was something in her eyes, a sharpness hidden beneath the softness. Marcus slowly traced the rim of his wine glass with his finger, keeping his posture composed. I invest in things that have value. He let the words linger, his voice low, deliberate, and things that promise long-term benefits. There was an unspoken meaning in his words, but Evelyn only chuckled, her blue eyes glimmering under the golden glow of the chandelier. So, am I a good investment? For the first time that night, Marcus hesitated. The question was innocent, playful, but it hit far too close to home. Did she have any idea how dangerous that question was? How close she had just come to exposing his secret? Because right now, in this moment, she truly was an investment one that had the potential to either destroy the Lancaster family or destroy him. Before Evelyn could say another word, a cold, authoritative voice sliced through the air like a knife. Evelyn, who is this? Marcus didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Edward Lancaster, Evelyn's father, the man who had murdered his mother years ago, without a shred of remorse. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. Evelyn turned, a bit startled, and found herself face to face with her father's piercing gaze. Standing beside him was Victoria Lancaster, Evelyn's mother, her expression unreadable but equally sharp. The two people Marcus despised most in this world were standing before him. And they had no idea who he really was, but Marcus knew exactly who they were. Evelyn, unaware of the sudden tension, smiled politely. Father, this is Marcus Blackwood, an investor. There was a subtle hesitance in her voice, a natural reaction perhaps to her father's unrelenting scrutiny. Edward's lips curled into a smirk as he slowly lifted his glass, taking a sip before shifting his gaze toward Marcus. Blackwood, that name sounds familiar. Marcus maintained his composure, his smirk never faltering. Perhaps, Mr. Lancaster. I believe we've heard of each other. Victoria finally spoke, her voice smooth, calculated, like silk hiding a blade. But I don't recall seeing you among the elite before. Marcus met her gaze head-on, unfazed. Elite or not, that's just a label. What matters is the ability to survive. A silent war had begun. Edward chuckled, but his eyes didn't match his amusement. We're always careful about who gets close to Evelyn. You understand? Not everyone has good intentions. Marcus understood. This was a warning, but if Edward Lancaster thought he could intimidate him, he was sorely mistaken. I completely understand, Mr. Lancaster. Marcus smiled, tilting his glass slightly. I, too, am very cautious about the people I associate with. A subtle challenge. The energy between them shifted, an invisible battle of dominance that neither man was willing to lose. The room was filled with people, music, laughter. But in this moment, in this small exchange, It was as if only the two of them existed. Marcus was standing in the lion's den. He knew that Edward was watching him closely, searching for any sign of weakness, but Marcus had spent years preparing for this. What he hadn't prepared for was her, Evelyn. She was still looking at him, her eyes flickering between her father and Marcus, sensing something was off, but unable to pinpoint what it was. And then something unexpected happened. She reached for his arm, a small gesture, barely noticeable, but to Marcus, it felt like an earthquake. "Marcus, are you okay?" Evelyn's voice was soft, concerned. Marcus froze. For a moment, just a moment, he almost forgot where he was, almost forgot why he was here. Because this was the first time in his life that someone had looked at him, not with calculation, not with suspicion, not with greed, but with genuine concern. And that was more dangerous than anything else in this room, because it meant she had already found a crack in his armor. He couldn't let her get any closer. He couldn't allow himself to feel this. But then, as Evelyn smiled at him again, without judgment, without expectation, Marcus realized something that made his stomach twist. His heart had already betrayed him. What was supposed to be an act was no longer just an act. And for the first time since this entire plan began, Marcus was afraid, not of the Lancasters, not of being discovered, but of what would happen if he let himself love her. The storm had started. Marcus knew it the moment he saw the black SUV parked outside the hotel. The next morning, when he found his apartment had been broken into, it only confirmed what he already suspected. The Lancasters were watching him. They didn't know who he really was yet, but they knew something wasn't right, and in their world, suspicion was as dangerous as guilt. Marcus sat in the darkness of his apartment, staring at the playing card left on his desk, the king of spades with a knife slashed through the middle. A message, a warning. But more than that, an invitation. They were testing him. The next few days were a blur of calculated moves. Marcus didn't return to his apartment. He couldn't risk it. Instead, he checked into a hotel under a different name, staying low while keeping a close watch on the Lancasters' movements. Meanwhile, Evelyn continued reaching out to him. He should have ignored her calls. He should have disappeared. But he didn't. Instead, he found himself answering, meeting her again, letting her get closer. Even when he knew that doing so was the worst possible mistake, she didn't realize that the noose was tightening around them both, and Marcus wasn't sure anymore who the real prey was, him or her. The next warning came at a gala event Evelyn invited him to attend. The Lancaster estate was more extravagant than Marcus had remembered from his childhood, but everything about it still felt cold, suffocating. The moment he arrived, he knew something was wrong. Security was tighter than usual. Armed guards patrolled the grounds. Guests were being screened more aggressively at the entrance. And when Marcus stepped inside, he felt it, the eyes watching him. Not just Edward and Victoria, others, men in dark suits standing near exits, guests who lingered too long in conversations near him, pretending not to listen. Marcus moved through the ballroom with practiced ease, acting as if he noticed nothing. But he noticed everything. The trap was being set. Evelyn found him near the balcony, away from the crowd, her expression softening the moment she saw him. "You came. You invited me." She smiled, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. "Something's wrong," she admitted. "My father has been acting strange. My mother keeps asking about you." Marcus already knew that, but hearing it from Evelyn only confirmed his worst fear. They were moving in. "What exactly did they ask you?" Evelyn hesitated. "They just wanted to know more about you, where you came from, your family." Marcus's stomach clenched. They were digging, and soon they would find something. That night, Marcus left the gala early. He had barely walked half a block from the estate when a black sedan pulled up beside him. The back window rolled down just enough for him to see the man inside, Logan Hayes, Edward Lancaster's right-hand man. The message was clear. Marcus sighed, straightening his jacket. "If you wanted a chat, you could have just called." Hayes didn't smile. "Get in?" Marcus considered refusing, but he knew it wouldn't matter. Either he stepped into that car, or they would make him. So he got in. The doors locked the second he did. The car ride was silent, except for the faint sound of rain hitting the windows. Marcus knew where they were taking him before they even arrived. The Lancaster family's private club, a high-end, members-only establishment where deals were made, secrets were traded, and people disappeared without a trace. They escorted him through the empty corridors until they reached a private lounge where Edward Lancaster sat, sipping a glass of whiskey. Victoria stood by the fireplace, her sharp eyes gleaming in the dim light. Marcus was shown to a chair across from Edward. Then, the door clicked shut behind him. The hunt had begun. Edward studied him for a long moment, swirling his drink. "You're an interesting man, Marcus." "So, I've been told." Edward smiled faintly, but there was no humor in his eyes. "You've done well for yourself, built quite the reputation." "I do my best." Edward leaned forward slightly. "But here's what I don't understand. Why are you here?" Marcus met his gaze evenly. "Evelyn invited me." Victoria scoffed from across the room. "That's not what my husband is asking." Edward exhaled slowly, placing his glass down. "You don't belong in this world, Marcus." Marcus smirked. "And yet, here I am." The room fell silent. Then Edward nodded to Logan Hayes, who stepped forward and placed something on the table between them. A manila folder. Marcus stared at it. He already knew what was inside. Everything they had on him. His investments, his connections, his past, and buried deep within those pages, his true identity. Marcus kept his expression neutral. Edward waited. Then, finally, he spoke. "You see, Marcus, I don't like mysteries. And you're a mystery. You appear out of nowhere, and suddenly my daughter seems interested." Victoria folded her arms. "We want to know why." Marcus leaned back, exhaling slowly. This was it. His cover was about to be blown apart. But before anyone could speak again, a gunshot rang out in the hallway. The entire room froze. Then, another shot. Logan Hayes reached for his weapon. Edward cursed, standing abruptly. Victoria's face went pale. Marcus, however, only had one thought: Evelyn. The door burst open. A guard stumbled inside, bleeding from his shoulder. They're here!" he gasped before collapsing. Edward's expression twisted in fury. "Who?" But Marcus already knew. He moved before anyone else could react, grabbing the folder off the table and shoving it into his jacket. Chaos erupted. Edward barked orders. Logan Hayes drew his gun. Victoria grabbed Evelyn by the wrist just as she ran into the room, eyes wide with terror. "Marcus!" But Marcus was already moving. The hunt had begun, and this time he wasn't the prey. The moment chaos erupted, Marcus moved. Edward Lancaster was barking orders. Logan Hayes was drawing his weapon, but Marcus was already 2 steps ahead. His hand clenched around the manila folder, the proof of who he really was, proof that, if left behind, would mean his end. And then there was Evelyn. Her face was pale, her blue eyes wide in confusion and terror. She had no idea what was happening, but she knew one thing. Marcus was running, and she had a choice: run with him or stay behind. Victoria Lancaster's grip on Evelyn's wrist was tight, almost bruising. "You are not leaving with him." Her mother's voice was low, dangerous, but Evelyn wrenched her arm free. "Mother, let me go." She turned to Marcus, to the man who had become everything to her in so little time. "Marcus, what is happening?" There was no time to explain. More gunfire outside, guards shouting, chaos closing in. Marcus grabbed her hand. "Trust me." Evelyn hesitated for a heartbeat, but then she ran with him. And that was the moment everything changed. They burst into the hallway, Logan Hayes shouting after them. Marcus pulled Evelyn behind him, weaving through the corridors, dodging past security that was scrambling to figure out who the real enemy was. Edward's men were fighting off a second threat, whoever had started the gunfight. Marcus had no idea who they were. Rivals? The police? Someone else with a vendetta against the Lancasters? It didn't matter. It was the perfect distraction, and he wasn't going to waste it. The estate was a maze of corridors and dead ends, but Marcus knew where he was going. He had studied every inch of this place before coming here. "This way!" He led Evelyn through a side passage, past an unused wing of the mansion. They had seconds before security would catch up. Then, a door, the wine cellar. He shoved it open, pulling her inside. The door clicked shut behind them, sealing them in darkness. Evelyn was breathing hard, trying to process what had just happened. She turned to Marcus, confusion giving way to anger. "Marcus, what the hell is going on?" Marcus closed his eyes for a second. This was it. This was the moment he either lied or told her everything. And as he looked at her, this woman who had trusted him, who had chosen to run with him despite everything, he realized something. He couldn't lie to her anymore. Not now, not after this. "Your parents aren't who you think they are, Evelyn." She stiffened. "What are you talking about?" Marcus exhaled. "They killed my mother." Evelyn felt the world tilt beneath her feet. She shook her head, her voice a whisper. "No, that's not possible." Marcus looked at her, his expression dark, pained. "It is." He pulled out the manila folder, flipping it open to reveal documents, photos, evidence. "Your father ordered it. Your mother made sure it happened." Evelyn felt like she was drowning. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. But the proof was there, right in front of her. Tears burned in her eyes. Her mind raced with memories, conversations she had overheard but ignored, moments she had brushed off as paranoia. Had it always been there? Had she just chosen not to see it? "Marcus, what were you going to do?" Her voice was unsteady. Marcus clenched his jaw. "I was going to destroy them." Evelyn let out a sharp breath. "Was I part of that plan?" Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence. And then, finally, "Yes." Evelyn took a step back. Marcus saw it. The way her face crumbled, the way her hands trembled. He had hurt her. He had planned to hurt her, but he hadn't planned on falling for her. He reached for her. "Evelyn, She shook her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. "No, you don't get to say anything." Her voice broke. "I ran with you, Marcus. I trusted you. And you—" She swallowed hard, unable to finish. Marcus felt something in his chest shatter. This was what he wanted, wasn't it? Then why did it feel like he had just lost everything? A loud bang at the cellar door. Voices shouting. The moment was over. They had seconds before security broke in. Marcus grabbed Evelyn's wrist, his voice urgent. "You can hate me later, but if we don't leave now, we both die." Evelyn's chest rose and fell rapidly. For a long second, Marcus thought she was going to let them take her back. Then, she grabbed his hand and ran. They forced open a side entrance, stumbling into the cold night air. Gunshots exploded behind them. Marcus shoved Evelyn behind a row of parked cars, shielding her. She flinched, but didn't let go of his hand. "Where do we go?" she asked, breathless. Marcus's mind raced. They needed to get off the estate, disappear. But first, he needed to make a decision. Did he keep running, or did he finally fight back? The night was filled with sirens. Marcus and Evelyn ran through the abandoned streets, their breaths ragged, their hands still clasped together. Behind them, the Lancaster estate was in ruins, metaphorically and literally. The evidence Marcus had leaked had begun its work. The police were closing in. Edward and Victoria Lancaster's empire was collapsing, its foundation of blood and betrayal finally crumbling beneath them. But it wasn't over yet, because the monsters don't die so easily, and the Lancasters had always known how to survive. The alley was narrow, dark, with nowhere to run. Marcus knew they had been cornered the second he heard the approaching footsteps, the clicking of heels, the slow tap of polished shoes against pavement. They turned, and there they were, Edward and Victoria Lancaster, standing before them with cold, unshaken expressions, and, in Edward's hand, a gun. Marcus immediately moved in front of Evelyn, shielding her with his body. His mind raced. They couldn't talk their way out of this. They couldn't run. This was how it would end. Edward lifted the gun, aiming directly at Marcus. "You took everything from me." His voice was calm, like a man stating an unfortunate fact. "Now, I take everything from you." The gun fired, but the bullet never hit Marcus, because Evelyn stepped in front of him, and the world stopped. Marcus caught her before she hit the ground. Her blood was warm against his hands, spreading across her white dress like a blooming rose. "No, no, Evelyn. Stay with me." His voice broke. His hands trembled as he pressed against the wound, as if he could somehow stop the inevitable. Evelyn's eyes fluttered, her breathing shallow. "I couldn't let them take you." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I had to choose Marcus, and I chose you." Marcus felt something inside him shatter. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. He was supposed to protect her. He was supposed to save her, but instead, she had saved him. Victoria Lancaster was frozen in place, her eyes wide with shock. Edward, however, merely tilted his head. "What a foolish girl," he muttered, almost disappointed. Marcus's head snapped up, rage like fire in his veins. "You killed her!" His voice was low, deadly. Edward's lips curled. "Collateral damage." That was it. Marcus didn't think, didn't hesitate. He lunged forward, tackling Edward to the ground. The gun fired again, missing this time, the bullet ricocheting off the alley wall. Marcus's fists collided with Edward's face, again and again, until he could feel the bones crack beneath his knuckles. Victoria screamed. The sirens grew louder. Police cars swarmed the streets, flashing red and blue lights, painting the night in violent colors. Logan Hayes, Edward's most trusted enforcer, was the first to run. Victoria tried to drag Edward away, but it was too late. The police surrounded them, guns drawn. "Edward Lancaster, Victoria Lancaster, put your hands up. You are under arrest." They had nowhere to go. Their empire was gone. Their power meant nothing. And as they were shoved into the back of police cars, Marcus barely even registered it, because he was still holding Evelyn, and she was slipping away. Evelyn's fingers, weak but still warm, curled slightly against his chest. "Did I make a difference?" Marcus felt his throat close. "Evelyn, don't talk like that. You're gonna be okay. I'll get you help." She smiled, software beautiful. "Just tell me I wasn't just another pawn." Marcus felt the tears spill down his face. "You were never a pawn." His voice broke. "You were the only thing real in all of this." Evelyn exhaled slowly. Her fingers went still, and Marcus let out a sound that wasn't human. Edward and Victoria Lancaster lost everything. The power they had built through corruption, cruelty, and bloodshed was nothing in the face of justice. But Marcus lost the one thing that mattered, and he finally understood. Hatred had given him a reason to live, but love had given him something worth losing. Evelyn had believed in him, even when he hadn't deserved it, and she had paid the ultimate price for it. 1 week later, Marcus stood before Evelyn's grave. He had expected to feel emptiness, but instead, all he felt was resolve. He had spent his life chasing vengeance. But Evelyn had taught him something more powerful than revenge. She had taught him that redemption is the only way to truly win. So now he would honor her. He would build something better, and he would never become the kind of man he had set out to destroy. Because in the end, power fades, hatred consumes. But love is eternal. This isn't just a story about revenge and betrayal. It's a story about choices. Marcus believed that vengeance would bring him peace, but in the end, it only brought him loss. The Lancaster family thought they were untouchable, but in the end, justice came for them. Evelyn, she chose love over blood, sacrifice over survival, and she paid the ultimate price. Power fades, hatred consumes, but love leaves a mark that time cannot erase. Now the question is, was it worth it? What do you think? Did Marcus truly win, or did he lose everything? Was Evelyn's sacrifice necessary, or was there another way? Could Marcus ever find peace after this? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk.